Most entrepreneurs don't have a business, they just have a high paying job with a really demanding boss themselves. If you have to be online, on calls, in the DMs, coaching every client for the money to come in, that's not a business that can grow without you. That's duct taping everything together, knowing it could come crashing down any second. And I know this because that's how I started too. If I got sick or took a week off, revenue dropped. And that's when I realized this is not scalable. I am the bottleneck. But you see, your clients aren't paying for you. They're paying for a result and they don't actually care whether that result comes from you, your process, your team, or the systems you have in place, as long as they get it fast. That's the shift that took me from 6 figures a year to 7 figures a year in revenue. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I build systems so my coaching business keeps growing even when I'm not in the room. And the first one, it's the one most coaches are terrified to let go of. So in the good old days, aka the first few years of my business, I sold me. I said, I'll deliver, I'll coach you, I'll be in the chat. But the problem was that wasn't sustainable or scalable. Because the problem with that is that you're selling a person, not an outcome or a result. So the first system I installed into my business was the sales system. The reason I did that is because it was the least volatile system. Most personal brands, coaching businesses are entirely dependent on them. So they pretty much have to show up to do all of the coaching. And we'll get to that later in the video. But the sales system is the easiest one to outsource because anybody could pretty much do that. And just hear me out on this one. So there's a few key parts, and this is what we call our cash system to running a successful online business. Cash stands for content, audience, sales, and high-class experience. Now, sales are actually the highest revenue generating activity for any business owner and any business in general. So you don't want to outsource your sales calls right away, but you can outsource your lead generation and the way in which you convert people to actually get onto a call. So you can outsource your DM appointment setting, or you could outsource your marketing and your copywriting. So the sales system, first, you have to prove that you can get consistent calls booked onto your calendar before you actually go out and hire a closer. So the second part of the sales system is then actually bringing in a closer. And this is why, if you haven't yet, you're definitely going to want to watch my other video where I go over my sales script in depth and why it's so important to have a script. Because even if you're amazing at sales, it doesn't matter because you don't want to be stuck in the sales seat forever. So imagine now, you could buy back your time instead of doing sales and DMs and content, and you could actually just focus on fulfillment. So that's why you want that to be your first system, but you also want to make sure you don't outsource it too quickly. And take it from me, someone who's made over $4 million in her business, and I've taken over 3,000 sales calls myself. Don't just run and jump to hire a closer right away. You need to first stabilize and make sure you can get a consistent number of booked calls, because the truth is a good closer is going to want to see consistency of booked calls on their calendar. So you want to first start with content and lead generation support, and then you can go into hiring a closer. So the second system I had to build is probably the most crucial one, but at the same time, it is the number one hardest one to create and build. And honestly, if you don't do it right, it could almost burn your business to the ground. And take it from me, because I failed at this system for so long, and that is the delegation system. A lot of people think that they're the CEO and they want to hire people and they want to build systems and outsource and delegate. But what they don't understand is that delegation is an art, and it is not something that you can easily just go hire anyone and just get them to do the same job as you. Because the truth is, no one is ever going to be you, and it would be a really unrealistic expectation for you to think that they will ever be as good as you. There could be people who are actually better than you, but you could also understand that some people might just be operating at 80% of what you could actually do, but 80% is more worth it than you spending your time doing that thing. So the reason why this almost burned my business to the ground was because I didn't follow this 3-step framework. And that is demonstrate, document, delegate. So what a lot of people do is they think, oh, I don't want to do sales calls anymore. I don't want to write my content. So they go and hire somebody and they jump right into delegation. But the problem is they didn't actually demonstrate for that person what success looks like, and they didn't actually document or create an SOP that's easy to understand and someone to implement. So you want to make sure that before you go to delegate and go to hire anybody, you have some room for error. Because the truth is, a really good hire takes a minimum of 9 months to ramp up, but really I start seeing actual results produced right around the 12-month mark. So you have to be dedicated and committed to this person. Now you could bring people on a project basis, you could bring them in part-time, but you're gonna eventually get to a point where you actually have to be okay with a little bit of error and hiccups in the beginning, but realize that they're there for the long-term success. And I think the thing that is often forgotten about when it comes to the delegation system is that actually bringing people onto your team is one of the most powerful things you can do as a business owner. Not just because they're gonna make you money and buy your time back, you actually get to change people's lives. I remember when I was broke as a joke, living in New York City, could barely pay my rent. What I did was I had this vision of just making $10,000 a month. Now I literally have team members that I pay $10,000 a month and more. And it's crazy to me that I just had a goal one day of making 6 figures a year. And now I literally am able to pay that out to one or more people. And I have a full team of people. So I think it's very awesome to delegate and buy your time back, but people don't realize how much actually goes into building a team and a great business behind the scenes. So before we get to System 3, I want to share with you a 7-day free email course I created to show you how you can actually turn your personal brand into profit for your business. So go ahead and check the first link in the description, and I'm going to send you day 1 right now. So the next system is one that is kind of invisible, and hear me out on this one. I say that it's invisible because sometimes people think, oh, I'm going to hire somebody and it's so cheap for them to do the work and blah, 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 blah. But what it actually boils down to is that sometimes the lowest paid people actually cost you a lot more than they make you. So you might be thinking, oh, well, I have this VA, I pay her $8 an hour, and yeah, you know, she's not great, but she's okay, and it's blah, blah, blah. But what's happening is when you're tolerating really low standards in your business and for your team members, they're costing you a lot more than they're quote unquote saving you. Because you think you're saving a buck here or there, and if you really want to do that, I think you should just use AI at this point. If you're gonna actually employ a real human being, you actually have to pour into them. And I wish this is something that my mentors taught me sooner. So system number 3 is the hiring system. I did not realize that hiring was such a skill, and it's a skill that needs to be learned. And I think a great example of this is that now I literally have management within my company, and I'm actually teaching the managers of my company how to host interviews and do hiring. And it's so interesting because when my manager sees a candidate and they bring it to me, I actually have a completely different point of view of who's going to be a good candidate and who's not. So that just reminds me that it really is a skill. And this is why I think it's so important for any business owner, regardless of the business size, to create core values. Because once you have core values, you can always compare against it. So for example, one of our core values is commitment to excellence. So that's a really easy filter for me to see if somebody's the right fit for my company or not. Because we really care about the small details, showing up on time, meeting your deadlines. So if people aren't going to do that even in the interview, it's very easy for me to say, is this person a fit for the company or not? And lastly, what I want to say here is that the best people on your team are going to be here to train you. Now, I'll be honest with you, in my first year, maybe even my second year of hiring people, I didn't even know that this was a thing because I couldn't even afford somebody that was that good. But I think about my executive assistant, for example. When I hired her, I said to her, hey, I know I need an EA, but I have no idea what you're supposed to do. So can you help me? And in our interview, she showed up with a 4-page document of all the things that she could do for me that I didn't even know could be done or I could get help with. So I think the best employees that you bring on are the ones that are going to teach you how they can thrive in their job. And finally, what I'll say here is that you want to make sure people that are working for you love to work. Because I think there's a big difference between someone who just does a job to get it done and it's sloppy and they're not motivated, but then somebody who actually cares about their work and follows the mantra of the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. So the last system is the most important system when it comes to scaling your coaching business, and that is the coaching system. So a lot of people come into the online coaching world thinking they're the best coach and they're the niche expert and they're the only one that could do the thing that they do. But the truth is, you want to make sure you're switching from being just an online coach to actually being a CEO. So it's easy to hire a OBM, an online business manager, or an operations person. But what about actually hiring coaches to coach under you? Think of Tony Robbins, for example. He doesn't say, I'm Tony Robbins, the coach. He says, I have a personal development company, and he is the head and the lead of that company. But now his wife does the coaching, he has certified coaches under him, he has methodologies, he has frameworks. So you have to shift the mindset from thinking that you're the one who has to do absolutely all of the delivery to actually building your philosophies, your IP, and your systems into frameworks that could be repeated over and over and over again. So for example, I have a full coaching staff that works under me that actually teaches and bridges off of my philosophies and my expertise. And they're expertly trained in my curriculum, in my teachings, but they're able to deliver it on my behalf. And this is where I see a lot of coaching businesses get stuck because they realize that they've just become highly paid employees of their own business because they're still doing all of the coaching themselves and they're not actually building frameworks and systems. So what I want you to think about is if you are going to sit down with somebody at a coffee shop and you are going to explain to them how to get from point A to point Z, that is your step-by-step process and methodology. And this is how you actually start selling outcomes on your sales calls and not just selling you and your time and your status. So the most important thing is to think about what does your ideal client want? And then what is the fastest, most efficient, and also least complicated way that they can get there? And then you can build that into a framework or a teaching philosophy. And then you can hire coaches to work under you. And then you don't have to be doing it all yourself and delivering it one-on-one. So these are the only 4 systems that you need to actually scale from 6 figures a year to 7 figures a year as an online coach, course creator, or online service provider. You need to learn how to hire, how to delegate, how to offload some of the things that genuinely you do not need to be doing anymore, like sales and marketing and coaching. This is where you really turn into a CEO and no longer a day-to-day manager or even worse, a firefighter. Your goal is to build a real company, not just a glorified one-on-one coaching shop. So if you want to install these systems into your business, go ahead and click the first link in the description. That's going to be a link for you to schedule a mini business audit with me or my team where we'll actually look at the systems that are running your business right now or the lack of them. And what we're going to do is we're going to give you a serious game plan on how you can install one, if not all, of these systems to actually build a profitable business up to $250,000 a year and more. And if you want the free stuff, go ahead and click the next link in the description, which is going to be my 7-day free email course where you can learn how to turn your personal brand into a profitable online business in just a couple of hours a week of content creation. And speaking about systems, if you want to grow a business that gets to a point where it's big enough to even need and require these systems, you're going to want to watch this video next, and I'll see you in the next one.